Hey guys, welcome back to Quick Tips. Today we're going to be talking about a pen tool technique that I learned a few years ago that really has revolutionized the way I use the pen tool and just how I think about building shapes and custom typography. So we're going to be going through, anchor points, Bezier curves, and what I call the north, south, east, west technique, um, and how it really helps with the customizability of shapes, custom typography, and just really how editable and customizable things are after they've been built. So just really quickly looking at this to ampersand from the typeface Playfair display, I'm just looking at an image trace version of it. It creates a lot of different anchor points. And if you're anything like me, you've seen this from, in logo files and all sorts of stuff. There's just way too many anchor points going on for curves that don't need it. So for example, let's say I was trying to, thin out this bottom stroke. It's really hard to do it without really going to each one individually and modifying it to get it all looking consistent. And even the same thing here, like let's say I wanted to move this piece down, it always breaks because there's too many anchor points. It gets tricky. And so what I'm going to teach today is this technique should hopefully simplify the amount of anchor points you use. It's almost like trying to create a low poly version of it, but trying to make it actually look nice and smooth while being really effective. So I like to switch over to regular, just, 0.5 black type or black stroke. And what I'm going to be doing is just placing straight lines and anchor points on top of what I'm tracing at the highest north, the furthest south, the furthest west and east. And, just trying to outline it that way, not worrying so much about the curves right yet. So here we go. I'm just going to start going through. You can see that I'm not dragging any handles out. I'm just going to the furthest, the very furthest bottom, right, left. If you don't have your smart guides on, smart guides are going to be really, really helpful. I'm a big fan of smart guides. They're going to be helpful for this technique, and I almost always just keep mine on just to make sure that I'm keeping everything as cleaned up as possible. On big curves like this, it doesn't really make sense to put one in the middle. So you just put one far right, far left, and that'll do the job. So I'm just going to actually be going pretty quick here because this is a quick tip, and we don't want to spend all of our time watching me click anchor points on an ampersand. I'm just going to go quick. You'll see how this all works. So essentially, we don't have to worry about the handles yet because there is Illustrator automates this feature for us. So here we go. This is our funky, jazzy ampersand that we're going to modify here. I'm going to take my direct arrow and select everything except for one anchor point. So I've got all of them selected. If you select all of them, it gives you a different menu. So this is just the anchor point menu. Right now, these are all corners, and we want to change it to smooth. And what it does is it just pulls out handles for all of these anchor points. So you'll see that some of them are kind of off to the side. The main idea is to keep it as straight up and down, or as as perpendicular and flat left and right as possible. So I usually, keeping smart guides on, I usually hold down the shift key while I'm dragging these. And I'm not going to worry so much about what's happening here. I'm just going to focus on the curve right next to this anchor point, right next to this anchor point. And the rest will just kind of work itself out. So I'm just going to pull this out to the side until that's starting to look like it's cleaned up and nice. And then I'll hold down shift on this one, clean it up there. And you've already got that curve already pretty situated. So I'm going to try it again here. And when you get to something like this, you can always click this again to undo it, to take it back to corners. I personally just hold down Option to break it. And once you've broken it, you don't need to hold down Option anymore. That will duplicate it. So you can just come here, do the same thing, not worrying about all of it. I'm just trying to focus on what's happening right next to it. And sometimes it takes a little bit of finessing. You can go back and fix it. So you can do that sort of thing fairly quickly. Sometimes it, because you've got the anchor points in the right spot, it does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. You can see how that's coming together fairly simply. And there's a lot of applications for this. I use it on custom typography a lot. It can be used on I actually forgot to do my own rule, which is to make sure you go back and get that last anchor point. Um, so there's that. Make sure you always do that. Anyway, there's a lot of applications for this. I actually use this technique more or less every time I use the pen tool. I may not always do the straight lines just because I may not know exactly what I'm building at first if I'm doing some illustration or some logo work. But I'll almost always place my anchor points in this kind of manner. I'll try and keep it as simple. Oops, I just did exactly what I said don't do. Do as I say, not as I do, I guess. Now I just want to show you this last little bit right here on this big curve, and this applies to S's too. Coming up, they're going to be really big handles. It may not work perfectly. That's fine if you just add an anchor point in the middle, drag that down. It kind of creates the right effect that you're looking for. Again, you might need to tweak things a little bit, make some adjustments. That's totally fine. I'd recommend doing those at the end though, so you don't get into any extra finagling. That's exactly why we're trying to do this technique, is so we don't get into too much of a mess too early on. Okay, I'm going to speed through the rest of this so you don't have to watch me do the whole thing, and then I'll slow it down right on the last one. All right, so you can see how we're just finishing this up, getting that last one. And you can see even on this one, just because of the humanist way this little curve comes together, sometimes you might have to tweak it. It may not need to be perfectly perpendicular. That's okay. The ideal would be to keep it perpendicular, but it may not always work. So, if you need to start going in customizing things, I'd recommend getting the whole thing traced first. And there we have, a very much more simple amount of anchor points to create them more or less the same thing. And then let's say we want to, thin this stroke out. It becomes a lot easier to do that. If you want to start doing what we were showing earlier, move this down. Whoops, I missed an anchor point there. Like, it's a lot simpler, and then that's when you can go in and customize it, adjust things as needed. But really, that's just the technique. I like to use it when doing custom type, but it works really well just, again, on all anchor point and pen tooling and Bezier curve applications. So that's it. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. If not, that's your quick tip for the day.